Hey, everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back for the 159th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. It's wonderful to have everybody with us. We have 31 people to start, and we have a pretty clear four-part agenda, which will probably disintegrate as we go forward and things get more interesting. We're going to open with Andrea Miller and Ray McClendon, our great grassroots organizers. Glad to have you both with us. A very strong agenda on voting rights for the week, and what else is new. We're also get a report from Ohio, Steve CARUSO, where every state official is about to go to jail for a $61 million bribe related to the nuclear industry. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Steve and I were talking earlier. I mean, we now believe that the governor of Ohio is in fact implicated in this bribe scheme, $61 million that the utilities put forward. We'll talk about that in a couple minutes. Around the half hour, we're going to talk with Dr. Robert Epstein, introduced by Camilla Reese. He's going to talk to us about how Google and other major internet players manipulate public opinion. It's really, really interesting stuff. And Dr. Robert Epstein has done a lot of work on it. So we'll want to take a look. At 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 Pacific, we're going to jump back into the nuclear world. We have the great KARL GROSSMAN with us to talk about the latest nonsense from the nuclear industry. And we want to deal with I guess it's a Saudi at the global climate conference saying that there's no scientific evidence that fossil fuels cause global warming. I mean, you got to credit these guys with a sense of humor. And then the last half hour, we're going to deal with the Middle East. We're hoping to have Steve Donziger, but there's obviously plenty to talk about in terms of the Israel-Palestine situation. So a full boat as always, and it's great to have all you wonderful people with us. We are a podcast on the Progressive Radio Network on Thursdays, 9 p.m., and all the recordings are archived thanks to the great Steve CARUSO at our electionprotection2024.org website. So this is our 159th meeting. We've been meeting since April 2020, and we hope to continue to go forward. And we will start with the magnificent Andrea Miller and Ray McClendon. Ray is in mourning because of the loss of Georgia to Alabama, and I'm sorry for that too. I was looking forward to a Georgia-Michigan national final, but we won't put the cart before the horse, as we say. Andrea, you want to jump in with us? And then Ray, please give us the latest. You have an event coming up on Thursday, Andrea, yep, and everybody should know about it and attend it. So let's hear about it.
All right. Thanks, Harvey. Thank you, everybody. Wanted to let you know that we are doing an event with our partners at the Workers' Circle, and the event is called How Voter Suppression Works Today and What You Can Do About It. So I'm going to basically be one of the speakers. We are also going to be joined by Evan Milligan of Alabama Forward. He brought the case in Alabama of Milligan versus Merrill, which led to the formation of a second majority-minority district in Alabama, Congressional District 2. And it also sparked redistricting in Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida as well. We will also have a very dear friend of mine, Richard Walker, talking about his lawsuit in Virginia when the current governor of Virginia, Governor Youngkin, when he realized the only part about voting that he really controlled was restoration of rights for returning citizens, began overturning people whose rights had been restored. So Richard filed a very, very interesting lawsuit, and he will be talking about that. And some of you, if you really follow things going on with elections, may have heard that in Mississippi on election day, Mississippi doesn't have early voting. On election day, Hinds County, which is 85% Black, ran out of ballots at 9 a.m. in the Black precincts. And so they sort of ran out of ballots all day. So we're going to have an activist, Carol Blackman from Black Voters Matter, who lives in Hinds County, Mississippi, talking about what went on in Mississippi. So the one thing that you have to give the other side is they are always thinking, they are always planning, they are always scheming. And one of the things that Ray and I do is we work very, very hard to dismantle their schemes. And when we can't legally do anything about it, come up with ways where it will help voters get around those schemes. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat. So if you want to sign up for that webinar, feel free. One of the other things that is going to be very, very interesting, and we are really going to be watching in 2024, is that Milligan versus Merrill is potentially going to be the last lawsuit of that type for a while, because the federal court has, in a new ruling, said that only the Department of Justice can bring a case against, or a case regarding the Voting Rights Act, that individuals and organizations will no longer be able to be the plaintiffs. So that is going to be very, very interesting as we work to get that overturned. That also, even though we are C3, we need to be aware that one of the first goals of any new Trump administration would be to totally take over and subvert DOJ, the Department of Justice, with their own people. So yes, it was a terrible, terrible, terrible ruling. So yes. And Ray, my partner in civil rights and civil justice, Ray, you've got some really interesting things going on in Georgia redistricting.
Yes, we do. And they are following in Georgia the blueprint established by Alabama from the standpoint that they are proposing maps in both the House and the Senate that would not comply with the court's ruling. And as you know, in Alabama, they didn't comply, and then they ended up having to have a special master to come in to redraw the maps. We seem to be on the same course. The final vote has not been taken yet, but the votes have occurred in individual houses, and now they're reconciling those bills to move forward. This is a part of a pattern, everybody, that we need to understand, that the MAGA Republicans do not believe in the rule of law. They believe in their minority rule. And this pattern is that they will defy the court system in order to achieve their political objectives of holding on to power. Essentially, what they hope they can do here is to run out the clock, whereby they don't comply, they muddle things in the courts, hope to get another delay, and then get this into January or February and throw up their hands and say, gee whiz, well, we tried, they wouldn't do anything. So let's just go with the maps that we already have, which would be non-complying maps that would allow for Black voters to be disenfranchised for the second election cycle. Remember that we were disenfranchised in 2022. Now it will be again in 2024. And we see what the consequence of those gerrymandered maps are in the dysfunction that we have in the U.S. House of Representatives right now. So this is these fights are consequential. They are deliberately defying the rule of law. And we are going to continue to raise up the standard. We've been protesting. We've been talking with the Democratic members, and we are hoping to raise enough cane here that the judge will be able to move swiftly if indeed they do as we expect, and they will not comply with the order, that we can get it back in the judge's hands as quickly as possible.
Well, as Steve Caruso points out in the chat, the same thing's been going on in Ohio. We had 2 state referenda demanding a Democratic, small d Democratic redistricting, a Ohio Supreme Court decision demanding new maps, and they still managed to get the same old gerrymandered maps used in 22 and are poised to do it again in 24. It's mind-boggling how the law and order Republican right wing doesn't care a bit about the law. We have 56 people with us. Andrea, will you post in the chat or on the screen the links to your Thursday event so that people can know where to go to join that event?
I just dropped the link in. Thank you, Harvey. I dropped the link in again.
What time is your event? What time is your event?
8 p.m. 8 p.m. Eastern.
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on Thursday. Yes. And the link is in the chat. There it is. How voter suppression works today, what we can do about it. Beautiful. 7 to 8:30 on Thursday, December 7th. That'll be right after the attack on Pearl Harbor. And we really look forward to it. Ray, does anybody, somebody had a hand. ERIC LAZARUS, real quick. Go ahead, Eric. Are you unmuted? Eric?
Hey,
go ahead.
pardon me if I'm just a little slow today. I never heard that point made that Ray just made, that the dysfunction in the House of Representatives is a direct, it directly relates to the crappy apportionment. I'm wondering whether, writing letters to the editor, writing to the media to say, make that point every time, like the next time they lose their speaker and can't pick another one, that the media should be pointing out that this is the result of that. I'd never heard that connection made. Thank you so much, Ray. Ray, maybe that ought to be a point that be made more widely. Thanks so much.
Okay, Ray.
Well, I agree with you that point needs to be made, and we need to continue to point out the fact that the MAGA Republicans don't believe in government; they believe in power, and so all of these tactics, whether it has to do with voter suppression on redistricting or denying the will of the people in Ohio on a constitutional change for reproductive rights. Whatever the case may be, we are moving to authoritarian minority rule. It's not just Trump, it's the entire MAGA-controlled Republican Party. So the broader issue is that these, as Harvey mentioned, these used to be the champions of law and order and so forth, and that's not who they are now. And we need to call that out, especially for the voters that we are looking to gain, that these are not law and order people. They are trying to subvert the rule of law, and that is impacting in multiple levels, only one of which is the direct relation to the dysfunction in the House of Representatives. but it is destroying our institutions one by one if we allow this to continue.
It's mind-boggling. I want to slip in here before we go to questions. Steve Caruso has a report from Ohio that you couldn't make up. As you'll recall, there was a $61 million bribe paid to the Speaker of the House of Representatives in Ohio, who's now in prison. And but it turns out that the chair of the Public Utilities Commission was also on the take. There's Sam Randazzo there, who I actually know, and now we see it's gone up to the governor, who participated. Well, I'll let Steve Caruso. Can you give us the update on Ohio's $61 million house fire here?
Oh yeah, Sam Randazzo, I've got it on the screen, was just indicted by the federal jury, the grand jury. They've been waiting on that to happen. Nothing's happened, and then they've recently called in DeWine for some documents which they've supposedly shared before, and they're kind of playing it down, but yet he's been impugned by people at First Energy, and that he was involved, and that he would supposedly tamp some of this feedback from the public down and help them get their agenda done. So he's implicated. And then also Husted is being deposed.
Well, who is Husted? Tell us who Husted is.
Yeah, he's not the Secretary of State, but he's the Lieutenant General. Rose is running for the Secretary. He is the Secretary of State running for Senate, but Husted is the Lieutenant General. So
Lieutenant Governor
involved too.
So there's Mike DeWine. Clean as a whistle, 11 children, totally anti-choice, straight arrow Republican governor of Ohio, who was once senator and, held every state office in Ohio. And he is now implicated in this $61 million bribe. This is the governor of Ohio, for God's sakes, and the Secretary of State, and the Attorney General, and the Speaker of the House. All participated in a $61 million bribe, whereby the Ohio taxpayer and ratepayer would subsidize a $1 billion bailout for the nuclear plant. I mean, it's mind-boggling, totally mind-boggling. So there, Ray and Andrea, Ohio got nothing on you. It's truly amazing. Okay, very quickly, Ray, Andrea, did you want to jump in, or Steve, did you want to add anything to that? Ray?
I think we've got some questions.
Yes, we do. Ray, did you want to say anything before we go to questions? Okay. Justin, go ahead, Justin. Unmute. There you are.
Yeah. So in California, we still do bribing. It's just through donations to the governor's office and for things like Diablo Canyon. But as far as all of these reversals, to tell the other side that we're playing hardball negotiating and not just going to let them get away with it, right? On the courts, you may have to threaten the packing of the seats, right? We're expanding the court because of all these stupid decisions. But then on the case of redistricting and apportionment, it used to be that only 30 to 50,000 residents per elected official, per House of Representatives official, but now it's 700,000. And that hasn't changed since just after World War I, almost basically 100 years. And so you could threaten to actually bring back to the original standard for representation. And I'm pretty sure the Republicans wouldn't like that too much.
Well, what's developed now, as Ray and Andrea pointed out, and Stephen, the MAGAs don't even follow the courts anymore. I mean, you had an open defiance of a majority decision of the Ohio Supreme Court on redistricting, handed down by a Republican Chief Justice, and they just blew off the Ohio Supreme Court as if it didn't exist. It's mind-boggling. Mary Stoneman, Stonewall Douglas, and then we'll continue. Mary?
Yeah, when we talk about the suppression of votes, not many people realized before the pandemic that any absentee ballots, especially overseas citizens working for the company that's located in the United States that are overseas running the company, or our servicemen and women, and then the elderly at one point. But since the pandemic, their votes are counted now somewhat. But what it was is, unless the presidential votes were within 250, they never opened the absentee ballots for the people overseas or the disabled in the United States. But now it's just the people overseas, whether it be servicemen or women or people working for a corporation. On top of that, states have been getting in trouble, like Ohio and other states, for not sending out the ballot to begin with, just because the person is overseas at this time, even though they're a resident of that state and they're doing their duty as a soldier or as a person working for a company. So we got to bring that to the forefront, because that's something we don't hear. And their votes, here's our servicemen and women, the number one people affected by who's in office, who never have their vote ever counted, because how often is it within 250?
Well, the point that happened in 2000. As you recall, there was a huge uproar over overseas ballots, where the Bush people, Karl Rose people, manipulated the vote count of the overseas ballot, and it really affected an election that was decided by less than 600 votes. So, okay, so Camilla REES is having trouble getting on. I'm not sure why, Steve. Maybe there's something that could come up. Oh, I see her. There she is. Andrea and Ray, do you have anything further you want to add? Andrea, tell us again about your upcoming event, please.
Well, I will talk about, and again, elections are managed. Federal elections, state elections, they are managed by each individual state. So different states have different rules at different times. So Board of Elections can do very, very interesting things. We know in 2017, we had a Board of Election refuse to count any ballots that arrived the day before the election. They simply didn't go to the post office and collect those ballots. And they just said, nope, we're not counting them. So we sued. So what's really important is, what are the rules that your Department of Elections has on the books for when do we count vote by mail ballots? Under what circumstances will we not count them? Now, Virginia has gotten very, 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 very good at counting absentee ballots in most counties, because we consider all of that early voting. And not a lot of people pay attention to early voting, but early voting is part of my religion. So we encourage everybody to early vote, and we watch those numbers as they come in. So it is very, very important that we be very aware of what our election officials are doing. When Governor Youngkin was going to allow the Electoral Board to not open any early voting locations in the Black neighborhood, as soon as we saw that, we just put together a little call to action. 180 people called him racist, and he then came out and called off the Board of Elections, saying, you have no standing to tell jurisdictions where they are going to open early voting locations. And I was glad he did that, because that meant I didn't have to go after the 12 largest counties in Virginia, worried that they were going to shut down all the early voting precincts or locations in communities of color. The governor said, "You've got no standing." And all the large counties opened all the early voting locations that they normally do.
Let me reinforce what Andrea is saying. Make sure everybody's clear on this. We talked about this a little bit in the past. The battle lines are being drawn in counties with local election boards. And what the MAGA Republicans are doing is they're taking over two local institutions, school boards and election boards, because they want to be able to dictate what votes get counted and who controls that local political process. So they're going after that. That's why things like the democracy centers that Andrea is establishing in various states, and other local grassroots organizations that we collaborate with and coordinate with, are so vital going into 2024. This is not going to be a national fight. This is not something that the Democratic Party can fight or any national progressive institution. You got to get local, and you got to have the boots on the ground that are committed to ensuring that the kinds of things that happen that we've all seen about the RICO case in Fulton County with Coffee County, you need local presence that refutes that supports the people who would stand up against those MAGA Republicans that gave access to Trump's people to look into those votes. I can tell you there's probably another 50 or 60 counties that would have been happy to do the same thing in Georgia. And we need to be prepared for that. We need to be prepared in the large counties, metro counties. Trump said it himself the other day. He wants the votes looked at. He mentioned Philadelphia, Detroit, and Atlanta. Why? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why he mentioned those three cities. Okay. And so we have to have that presence locally to deal with the people that he's putting in place. We just here in, I live in DeKalb County. We just had a woman in DeKalb County just get 500 people thrown off the rolls. Okay. And we're trying to get them back on the rolls right now. And she is an ultra MAGA conservative who thinks that Trump won in 2020. That's what the fight is going to be, it's going to be local skirmishes across these districts that you have to have local people committed to holding the line.
It's mind-boggling. Thank you so much, both of you. Go Wendy, Steve, and then we're going to go to Camilla Reese and Dr. Robert Epstein. Go ahead, Wendy and Steve, please.
Thank you. And sorry, it's a little late. I was listening on my phone. Thank you. So I just wanted to bring up a quick case that should be on everyone's radar. I'm sure it's already on Andrea's and Ray's, out of Arkansas, where the NAACP there sued for gerrymandering, basically, and it's more complicated than that. But the court ruled that they didn't have basically to sue because they're not because they're private citizens, and they're claiming that the 15th Amendment doesn't allow private citizens to sue under the Voting Rights Act, and only the Attorney General can. And they cited a bunch of cases that they're just making a big word salad on it. I think we'll continue on this. I'm trying to find someone to speak on this more later, but it's just a really interesting case because I think it's heading to the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court holds up that only the Attorney General can sue for private citizens' rights under the Voting Rights Act, that's just a whole new world. So I wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll say something quickly on that. Andrea mentioned it earlier. The Arkansas is a part of the 8th Circuit, and that's the circuit that ruled this way. Right now, there's splits in the circuits across the country. So it will be headed to the Supreme Court. As an example, that doesn't impact any of the current suits that we have now. It wouldn't impact a new suit now unless say here in the 11th Circuit, where Georgia is, they ruled similarly in Georgia. But to the point, it is headed to the Supreme Court, but it is not the law of the land yet. It only impacts those states. I don't know how many they are, but Arkansas is one that's a part of the 8th Circuit.
So very simply, it's a method to gut the Voting Rights Act by forbidding anybody except a government official from suing
Yes.
under the Voting Rights Act, which is
I saw
obviously
a statistic that said out of the 180 plus suits that have been brought, only and I think prevailed, only 15 of those came from the Justice Department. So it would dramatically curtail the amount of scrutiny that was going on with these voting rights issues under the Voting Rights Act.
And this obviously is a huge deal, and Andrea will be discussing that on Thursday, among other things, in her call. Steve Caruso and Julie, and then we're going to go to Camilla Reese and Dr. Robert Epstein to talk about Google manipulation of people's public opinions. Very hot topic. Go ahead, Steve, and then Julie.
Yes, in the Constitution, it says that people have the right to petition the government, and there's talk online saying that that includes the courts too, and I don't know why it wouldn't. And also, if Congress is dominated by the Democrats, they can go ahead and make any rules about elections they want, except for the time and the place of election of senators. That's what the Constitution says. So if we ain't there yet, and thank goodness for Ray and Andrea and all the work they're doing on all this. Thank you.
I agree 100%. Julie Weiner in New York.
You got Camilla's.
I'm going to go to Julie, then we'll wrap this up, and then we're going to move into with Dr. Robert Epstein. Go ahead, Julie, please. Are you?
There we go. Okay, I think I got it. Thank you.
Julie's in New York.
I'm in New York, and New York State allows citizen organizations to sue agencies of the New York State government when they fail to carry out the law in New York State. So I just want to celebrate with you all that just before the deadline, within a couple of days of the deadline of a terrible action that was taken by the New York State Board of Elections, August 2nd, before the December 2nd deadline, Common Cause and the Black Institute have sued the New York State Board of Elections under Article 78 provisions to reverse their certification of the ES&S Express Vote Excel hybrid barcode counting voting machine, because it denies voters the right to verify their ballot before it's cast and counted, because it counts with barcodes. So anyway,
we've discussed that through the months, and Julie, it's great to have you on that case, and it's important information. That's a very big deal, and let's talk about it in more detail next week if we can.
Great, happy to.
Yes,
Yeah.
and before we move on, I want to point out that even referenda are not sacrosanct when it comes to the MAGA Republicans. In Florida, we know that a referendum passed overwhelmingly to re-enfranchise ex-felons, and the state legislature jumped in with this ridiculous demand that they pay fees and disenfranchised at least 1 million people. And that's why Ron DeSantis is the current dictator of Florida. And we're now having a similar situation in Ohio. We just had a referendum pass overwhelmingly legalizing pot, and already the MAGAs are coming in there and tearing apart the will of the public. Ray and Andrea, is there anything further you wish to say before we go to Camilla Reese and Dr. Robert Epstein?
I'm going to make one comment on Florida Amendment 4. When I first read the proposed text of the amendment, I very strongly suggested that they add what we put in our Virginia amendment, irrespective of payment of fines and fees. Just that 3 simple words would have made that amendment strong, and the legislature could not come back and say, whoa, wait a minute, you've got to pay your fines and fees. So when we draft legislation, we have to think about what are the unintended consequences, and we also have to think about how can people of bad intentions turn this and subvert it.
Thank you very much. Andrew, we'll see you on your event Thursday night. Great to have you with us as always. Ray, do you want a final word here?
I'm good, thanks.
Oh, it's always great to have you both on. Please come again next week, and we'll continue this ongoing saga of voter repression. Okay, we're now going to move to a related topic, one we haven't talked about before in all our years, and we got Camilla Reese to thank. Camilla, do you want to come on and introduce Dr.
Sure.
Epstein? Sure.
So next up, we have Dr. Robert Epstein of the American Institute for Behavioral Research. He's a behavioral researcher and psychologist and data scientist and programmer, and he's been studying human behavior and ways to change it for decades. In fact, he was the last doctoral student under B.F. Skinner at Harvard. And his institute, more recently, the past 16 years or so, has been studying the online manipulation of voters by Google, and also the online manipulation of children. Manipulation, censorship, and they do this through a Nielsen-like system that is monitoring people's computer screens across the country, now in 50 states. And his research has been published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences and PLOS ONE, and he's testified in Congress about his findings, and also spoken with many attorneys general. He says that since about 2015, about 25% of national elections globally have been decided by Google, and that this online threat to democracy is extremely important that we understand. We may not like some of his findings, nor did he, but it's important that we understand the ramifications of what he has found is happening in the US and other countries. So, Dr. Epstein, welcome, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good. You're speaking to 63 people. You're being live webcast, and this will be rebroadcast on the radio in New York City. So it's great to have you with us. Tell us about Google manipulating us.
Sure. Well, it's a pleasure and an honor to be on your program, and I was just listening in for a few minutes, and I can see there's a lot of expertise here, a lot of passion, and a lot of interest in election integrity, and that's what I want to talk to you about, but probably an aspect of it that you're not currently familiar with. I should point out also that by way of my other credentials, besides my academic ones, that I've always leaned left politically. At the moment, I'm considered a kind of a darling among the right, which really bugs me. That's an understatement. I'm just saying it very as politely as I can. But let me explain why. What I've found, what I've discovered, and again, the work that we do is extremely rigorous scientifically, and we publish in peer-reviewed journals. We present at scientific meetings. What I'm talking about is not speculative. It may have been 10 years ago, but not anymore. What I need to tell you about, need to inform you about, is about a serious threat to election integrity that is operating in ways generally that you can't see. It's operating on a scale that is mind-boggling, and the numbers are astonishing. And generally speaking, as we've made discovery after discovery over the years. I haven't believed the numbers myself, but I believe them now. I've come to believe them over time. And there have been leaks from Google and other companies, leaks, whistleblowers, leaks of emails, documents, PowerPoint presentations, videos, all of which have confirmed the most problematic, the most terrifying of my scientific findings. Okay, so what have we found? What are we doing? Well, since 2013, my team and I, and we operate at a nonprofit, nonpartisan research institute, which is a 501c3. My team and I have been looking at discovering new ways of influencing people, of manipulating people, of taking particularly the votes of those who are undecided and pushing them one way or another. We've been discovering ways in which the internet has made that possible, which have never existed before in human history. Never. And unfortunately, these techniques have been developed by and are exclusively in the hands of a couple of big tech monopolies, Google being by far the worst of the culprits. Now, some of you may know that Google leans left politically, as I do, so one would think maybe I would be happy to discover and confirm over and over again that Google has access to these new techniques and is actually using them. But I'm not happy about that at all, because the problem with Google is, they might be supporting the left today, at least in the United States, but you don't know what they're going to be doing tomorrow, because they're not accountable in any way to us, to the people. Their executives don't even turn over, generally speaking. And by the way, they don't necessarily support the left around the world. In Cuba, they support the right. They've been working with China off and on for a very long time, helping the Chinese government to control its own population. Country by country, they do whatever they want to do. So again, I'm happy in one sense that they support the left in the United States. In another sense, I find this abhorrent. It undermines democracy and makes democracy meaningless. Now, I should point out also that we've most recently have started to track the ways in which they're deliberately, strategically indoctrinating our children. Now, I'm a parent of 5, and I can't even tell you how much I object to that. That is, to me, completely unacceptable. I don't care what their politics are. I don't care what their messaging is. I don't think they should be messing with our kids. Now, let me begin to share with you some of our findings and some of the numbers, because I think this is where, if I'm explaining myself clearly enough, this is where I think you should become very, very deeply concerned. We're all interested in election integrity. Some of us on this call have been focusing on local issues, some on state issues. Well, Google can focus on local issues as they please and state issues, but also on national issues and international issues. They can go anywhere they want. They're impacting right now the beliefs, attitudes, opinions, purchases, votes of more than 5 billion people around the world. So they can do what they want, and they can do it on any scale that they want. Our first discovery was of an effect we call SEME, S-E-M-E, the search engine manipulation effect. If you go to searchenginemanipulatioeffect.com, you'll come to a piece that I published in 2015 in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. That scientific article, which is very technical, has been downloaded or accessed from the website of the National Academy of Sciences more than 250,000 times. That's extremely rare. I know the people who discovered gravity waves a few years ago, they have a few thousand downloads, not 250,000. There's an interest here in what we're doing. So what is SEME? SEME refers to the fact that Google can shift the votes of undecided voters dramatically and quickly just by favoring one candidate over another in its search results.
Jesus.
Now, what does that mean? That means all they have to do is tweak the algorithm a little bit, or sometimes it's even easier. They just have to put one candidate on a black list, put another on a white list. They can do this in so many different ways. What that results in is that when people click on search results that are high up on the list, they end up getting connected to a web page that makes one candidate, the favored candidate, look better than the other. So in 2016, for example, Google was Hillary Clinton's largest financial supporter. I also supported Hillary Clinton. And in fact, they were biasing their search results in a way that favored Hillary Clinton. How do I know this? Because we in 2016 set up the world's first system to surveil them the way they surveil us and our kids 24 hours a day. We recruited 95, we call them field agents, all registered voters in 24 states. We equipped their computers with special software that we developed that allowed us, in effect, to look over their shoulders when they were conducting searches for anything politically related, anything, the wall, immigration, anything at all, on Google, Bing, and Yahoo. And we preserved 13,000 searches. So each search had 10 search results. So that's 130,000 search results. And we also preserve the web pages that those search results connected to. So about 100,000 web pages. Because we preserve that content, which is normally lost forever, we were able to calculate the bias in each search position. We found a very strong pro-Hillary Clinton bias in all 10 search positions on the first page of Google search results, but not on Bing or Yahoo. That's important. So this is something that Google was doing, but not the other search engines. Now, the other search engines don't matter because they only get 1 or 2% of search. Google gets 92% of search worldwide. So it's all that really matters when it comes to elections is Google. So there was bias, and we knew from the experiments we've been conducting since 2013 that if that level of bias that we detected from our 95 field agents, if that level of bias had been present nationwide, that would have shifted over a period of months between 2.6 and 10.4 million votes to Hillary Clinton, again, whom I supported. So as you may recall, she won the popular vote by 2.8 million votes. Well, our data, our research, which is quite rigorous, suggests that if Google had not been supporting her, then in fact, the popular vote might have been pretty even. That's kind of scary to me because I think Trump is a disgrace. That's very scary to me. So, okay, I'm glad Hillary had Google's support. Obviously, they weren't paying enough attention to the swing states because tiny margins, 77,000 votes in 4 swing states, put Trump over the top in the Electoral College. Let's not even go there. But the point is they weren't paying attention. The day after that election in 2016, they had an all-hands meeting. The video of that meeting was leaked and can still be accessed. And you've got all the leaders of Google up on stage. They're practically crying. They're practically in hysterics. And they are swearing that they will use all of the power that they have available to them and make sure that this kind of election result never happens again. Okay, so now we've got a bigger problem because they're not only shifting votes, but now they're making a commitment to make sure that that never happens again. That, in other words, that Trump is never reelected or anyone like him is never reelected. Okay, again, part of me cheers them, part of me is horrified. 2018, we set up a larger monitoring system. We were able to surveil them more aggressively. We found strong liberal bias, as one might expect, on Google, not on Bing or Yahoo. 2020, we didn't have 95 field agents. We had 1,735 field agents mainly in 4 swing states. We found, again, extreme liberal bias on Google, not on Bing or Yahoo. The bias was sufficient to have shifted at least 6 million votes to Joe Biden, whom I supported, at least 6 million votes, and he won the popular vote by about 7 million. So again, without Google's support, it's possible the popular vote would have been very close. That's frightening to me. And again, part of me, I'm split. I'm split on this issue. Obviously, as you can tell, I'm split. But it's become, as I've seen the power though that Google has and how they wield it, I've become increasingly concerned, especially when it comes to kids. All right, let's skip to 2022. We set up an even bigger system. Again, extreme liberal bias. At this point, I realized that, this country must have a permanent large-scale monitoring system operating in all 50 states. Because if you set up a system like this, you force all the tech companies to stay away from our elections and stay away from our kids and stay away from our minds, for that matter. Just, make your money, but don't try, altering the way we think and the way our kids think. And the only way to really make that happen is with a large-scale monitoring system. How do I know that works? I know positively because in 2020, we shared some of our data right before the election with a couple of U.S. senators. As a result, 3 U.S. senators sent a very threatening letter to the CEO of Google. This was on November 5th, right after the election. And that same day, on November 5th, Google turned off all of its manipulations in Georgia, which, as you, I'm sure, remember, was gearing up for the 2 Senate runoff elections in January. We know that they turned off all their manipulations because we had more than 1,000 field agents in Georgia. We preserved more than 1 million of what Google calls ephemeral experiences in Georgia. These fleeting experiences people have online. For example, when you type in a search term and they show you search results, or they flash search suggestions at you, or they show an answer box, or on YouTube where they show you a sequence, or they play the next video automatically. All of that content is ephemeral. It's generated just for you. It disappears, and it's gone forever. And you can't go back in time and see what they were showing people. So in other words, it leaves no paper trail for authorities to trace. Unless you have any doubt about whether they do this deliberately, I refer you to a leak of emails from Google to the Wall Street Journal in 2018, in which Google employees are discussing how can we use ephemeral experiences to change people's views about Trump's travel ban. So this is lingo they use inside the company. They do what they're doing deliberately. Jumping ahead to today, because I know our time is very limited, and I want to show you what we've been able.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, I'm going to jump right ahead to a share screen, and I'm going to explain to you what we've built and the help we need to complete the system that we've built. I decided after the 2022 midterms that the time had come to set up a permanent system that will permanently keep these companies, not just Google, but the next Google and the one after that, just keep them out of our elections and away from our kids. So I'm going to switch now to share screen. I hope this works.
Steve Caruso is our engineer. He's very good at this.
Okay, I think I've got it. Boom.
Yeah, there you go.
Now you should see a web page, which is at americasdigitalshield.com, americasdigitalshield.com. If that's too much for you to type, go to ourdigitalshield.com. That'll work as well. And what you're seeing here is a $3 million website. That's what it's cost us over the past year. We've had grants and we've had donations from some wealthy individuals who are very concerned about election integrity. And what you're seeing here is live and it's real. You are seeing data coming in from the computers now of 13,000 field agents. We call them tech watchdogs, of 13,000 field agents in all 50 states. And you're seeing the number of ephemeral experiences that we have captured on Google and other platforms. And as you can see, we are about to cross over to 44 million. A few hours from now, we'll cross over to 44 million. And what do we see as we capture the ephemeral experiences and we archive them and analyze them? I'm scrolling down a bit. First of all, we are seeing utterly unbelievable content on Google Kids, extremely violent, extremely sexual. Some of it's so bizarre that it's hard to even put into words what they're showing. And you're seeing actual images from hundreds of thousands of videos that we are preserving as part of this huge effort to preserve the content that is ephemeral, that normally disappears forever, which gives Google, and to a lesser extent other companies, the ability to manipulate us without us being able to respond in any way or compensate for what they're doing. I'm going down to political content now. On Google, Bing, and below that you'll see Yahoo. You're seeing below the line on each graph, you're seeing data points which are showing you the overall bias in content that they're showing people on their search engines. Google, Bing, and below that Yahoo. And in all cases, all the dots are below the line. They're showing liberal content. So again, this may not be what you want to hear, and again, I'm already split on this issue as I've explained, but this is highly biased content sufficient to shift tens of millions of votes, especially among people who are undecided, the people who are vulnerable. And notice Bing and Yahoo now are tracking Google. You know why? Because they're all getting their search results now from Google. So Google's influence has greatly grown over the years. Bing and Yahoo are no longer independent search engines. YouTube is coming soon, Twitter, TikTok, they're all coming. But this is the one that really blows my mind. On the left, you're seeing the political landscape of the United States. You recognize that. The red states and the blue states. Far too many red states. Far too few blue states, but we have bigger populations. But on the right, you're seeing the political bias in the content being sent by Google to people in all 50 states. It's all blue. Well, so they're sending liberally biased content.
In Idaho.
Well, Idaho that's extreme. See,
Right.
that's extreme liberal. It's being sent to Idaho. But you can go state by state and you can actually see the differences. And here are elections flipped by Google, including the 2020 presidential election. Now, I didn't want Trump to win, but I don't think that giving this much power to a private company makes sense, and it does make democracy absolutely meaningless. And finally, just to tell you how rigorous the system is, we're extremely careful about balancing the demographic characteristics of our field agents, so the people we call our watchdogs. So we're evenly balanced between liberals, conservatives, moderates, and people who don't identify. And this is a $3 million system. We now have court admissible data in 15 of the 50 states. We're in all 50, but we have court admissible data in 15 states so far. This needs to be much bigger so that we have court admissible data in all 50 states. Is the point to sue these companies and send people to jail and fine them? No, the point is to stop them. The point is to stop them. And this is how you stop them, is you make what they're doing completely transparent. You can't do that by looking at their algorithms. The only way you can do it is by looking over the shoulders of real users, because real users are getting personalized content. That's why you have to do it this way. Extremely, extremely difficult to recruit these people. We have to call 100 people before one person says, yes, I'll do it. But this must be done. This is not optional, because think about the kinds of shenanigans that you folks are studying. Whatever labels are put on them, having to do with restricting voter access by minorities, having to do with the crazy things that the conservatives talk about, ballot harvesting and ballot this and ballot that. All of those techniques are inherently competitive. and they tend to shift a few hundred votes here and there. What Google does is different. If Google wants to support a candidate or a party, there's nothing you can do. There's no way you can counteract what they're doing. You buy a billboard, I can buy 2 billboards. But if Google wants to support one candidate, they can do it on a massive level. They can do it invisibly using ephemeral content with no one aware that they're even doing anything. And they can shift millions of votes, and you cannot counteract what they're doing. If you want to pursue this further, or you want to help us in any way, please go to americasdigitalshield.com or go to mygoogleresearch.com, and that'll give you access to all the many scientific papers and the talks and the articles. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I went over time, but
No, that's incredibly fascinating. I assume everybody else is as fascinated as I have, because virtually nobody's left the call. We're at 60 people. We are at the top of the hour, but I want to continue. I do want to ask you a question. Do you have any evidence of Google or these other search engines biasing the viewership towards nuclear power and away from renewable energy?
Okay, I am extremely interested in that issue, and I can give you good news and bad news. The bad news is we have no evidence of that sort because we haven't looked at it. The good news is the monitoring system that we've set up is so flexible that if we wanted, literally by tomorrow, we wanted to have data on that to see whether they're, what kinds of content they're sending out and whether it's biased one way or the other, we can do it. We can monitor anything at this point, and we have a big enough system so that and you can see we've learned how to analyze data so fast, literally in real time, that we can get answers to questions like that very, very easily without a system like this in place. Yeah.
I would love to see data on that, because we are, those of us in the safe energy community, you can take down the shared screen if you want. Those of us who are concerned with nuclear power and energy technologies that destroy the earth are kind of at a loss to understand why this push from nuclear seems to resonate with so many people, because it's absolutely insane. And there's absolutely no reason why the public should favor nuclear energy at this point in time, because we have a booming renewable industry that clearly benefits the planet and the economy and the job picture. And yet we seem to be, at this point in time, treading upstream, and we see people believing utter nonsense coming from the nuclear power industry. So if you're at all inclined, we'd be interested to see what kind of bias might be coming from Google. The second question I wanted to ask you is, what is it with the children? What are they putting out there, and why that would be so manipulative in a bad way of children?
Well, first of all, we know in links from the company that they are deliberately engaged in a large-scale campaign of indoctrination of children. So that we know for sure.
For what?
We don't know
what are they indoctrinating?
They're indoctrinating. Well, they're trying to indoctrinate values. And so there's one of the leaks from the company is an 8-minute video, which is called The Selfish Ledger. If you go to The Selfish Ledger and then put not my name in there, please don't use google.com. Please stop using that. That's an extremely aggressive surveillance platform. Use Brave. The Brave browser does not track you. Use the Brave search engine. It doesn't track you. There are ways to use the internet so that no one tracks you. If you go to myprivacytips.com, you'll come to an article of mine which begins with the sentence, "I have not received a targeted ad on my mobile phone or computer since 2014. So if you want to know how I do that, go to myprivacytips.com. The point is, to answer your question, there's no question that they're after our kids, because that's how you control the future, is you go after the kids, and kids are extremely, extremely vulnerable. So how they're using the content they're using to achieve their ends, I'm not sure, but that leaked video that I just mentioned, The Selfish Ledger, actually talks about the ability of the company to re-engineer humanity according to, and I'm not kidding you, it's in there, according to Google's values. It doesn't say company values, it says Google's values. So why this horrible, weird, crazy stuff? I think that has to do with addiction. It's what social scientists call negativity bias. It's like when you're on the highway and there's an accident up there, you cannot, no matter how hard you try, you cannot pull your eyes away. And that's called negativity bias. It's also called the cockroach in the salad phenomenon. I think that the horrific content on YouTube is put there in very short bursts here and there so that parents don't see it. It's put there to addict children so that they will come back over and over and over again.
Wow.
But the larger program, the details, we haven't figured that out yet. So preserving content that's going to real kids, that's step one. Remember, this has never been done before. And if we are not tracking them, if we are not keeping track of this content, we will have absolutely no idea why someone won or lost an election. We will have no idea why our kids believe the craziest things that we don't. We're saying, where did this come from? We will not understand what is happening around us unless we do to these companies what they do to us 24 hours a day. We have to track them. We have to surveil them, and we have to preserve the content so it can be analyzed now or in the future.
Well, I find this incredibly fascinating.
Can I ask a question?
55 people. Dave Saltman has, someone's jumping in here. Dave Saltman hasn't spoken. Dave's my buddy from way back and has an incredible resume in the major media. David, come on, jump in, please.
Well, I just have a question. I'm not sure I understand. And if I've missed this, it's my fault. How do you know the votes were changed?
There's a question coming from
undecided voters. How do you know the vote changed?
Right.
So that you've seen all these influences, but where's the proof that that had any effect? It didn't change the map of the red and blue map.
Wait, you're muted somehow. Dr. Epstein, hold on. Epstein. Somehow you got muted. I don't know what's going on here. Why are you muted?
Mute.
Who's muting you?
Yeah, we have a problem with people unmuting themselves and cutting people off and then trying to mute the interrupters, and we've accidentally so here's
okay, I'm back.
Let me just explain real quick, and we can move on. If you unmute yourself and when we don't call on you, we're going to kick you out. We got to get through this, so please cooperate. We'll get to everyone as long as everyone cooperates.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Epstein.
Sure. Well, we know positively and without doubt that the change occurs in people who are undecided. We know this from now more than 11 years of randomized controlled experiments with tens of thousands of people. These are very, very carefully done experiments, which are not only randomized and controlled, they're counterbalanced and so on. So, and we publish in top journals. So our work actually makes it through peer review. And we have a whole bunch of new studies coming out on what we call the YouTube manipulation effect. So we've quantified the how YouTube can be used to shift opinions and votes. A targeted messaging effect that shows the impact of tweets, believe it or not, on what used to be called Twitter. This work is extremely sophisticated. We know positively and without any doubt exactly what kind of shift each technique can produce. And the monitoring systems, they show us whether the techniques are actually being used. So you have on the one hand, the rigorous scientific work that quantifies and identifies the techniques. On the other hand, we have the monitoring systems, and they capture the evidence showing that the techniques are being used. But if you're interested in, you want the details, go to mygoogleresearch.com. It's got links to lots and lots of content. Or if you go to googlestripplethreat.com, you'll see an expanded version of my congressional testimony. And by the way, just yesterday, I was invited again to testify before Congress. So that might happen within the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Dave Saltman, do you want to continue with that question?
Am I missing something? If they were undecided in the first place, how do you know what they would have decided if they decided something else?
Because the experiments generally have three parts to them. In the first part, we give people some very basic information about some candidates, and we get them to weigh in on who they would vote for. We ask them lots of questions about trusting and liking and so on. And then we give them a chance to do some research on the candidates, and we'll, let's say, give them access to a search engine. Some people are randomly assigned to a group in which the search results favor one candidate. In some, they favor another candidate. In a third group, they favor neither candidate. And after they do the research so that they now feel more comfortable making an informed decision, we ask them those questions again, and we see if there's a shift. When we first did this, very first experiment we ran in early 2013, I predicted we could use biased search results to produce a 2 or 3% shift in voting preferences. I couldn't have been more wrong. And by the way, 2 or 3% I thought would be important because some elections are very, very close. If you can shift 2 or 3% of undecided voters at the last minute, that can swing a close election. But I was wrong because the shift we got in that first experiment was 43%. When we repeated that with an entirely different group, and these were not college sophomores, by the way, this is a group of people who are representative of US voters, we got a 66% shift. Then we were able to learn quickly enough that we could mask what we were doing so that no one had the slightest idea that they were seeing biased search results. No one had the slightest idea that they were being manipulated. And then we did a national study in the US with more than 2,000 people, again, got an enormous shift in voting preferences. But more importantly, this group was so large that 8% of them did claim to see bias in the search results. And guess what? They shifted even farther in the direction of the bias. So just seeing the bias doesn't protect you from the bias. Those people basically were saying to themselves, well, I can see that the algorithm is preferring this candidate. This must be the best candidate. And don't forget, we're using random assignment. We're pushing half the people toward candidate A and the other half toward candidate B. We can push undecided voters any old way we want to, and so can Google.
Okay, David, you want to follow up on that? Or this is really fascinating. We could
just
go on for another hour.
One last
question. Go ahead, Dave.
One last observation, and then I'm off.
No, it's fine.
To what degree is this different from just regular advertising? Isn't that the issue more than Google per se? In other words, the attempt to influence votes has been there forever. How is this? Is this just a question of scale?
No, not at all. This is a fundamentally different kind of technique because if you buy an advertisement, I can buy an advertisement to oppose yours. And then you can buy 2 advertisements to oppose mine. Advertising, billboards, getting dead people to vote. I don't care. You know, you look at any particular technique that's ever been used, all the dirty tricks and the not so dirty tricks and the normal methods of influence using advertising, they're all inherently competitive. Unfortunately, the person who has the most resources tends to win because of that, but they're inherently competitive. The problem is that if Google, which controls 92% of search worldwide and controls most email worldwide and controls most online traffic worldwide through its Chrome browser and controls most mobile computing worldwide through Android, its operating system, all of those are surveillance platforms, okay? So they know more about you than anyone in the universe. They know more about you than you do. And we know from our latest research that if they customize the biased content they're sending you, they customize it based on your preferences, that triples, it can triple the size of the effects that we get from bias alone. Personalizing gives them much more power. So in other words, Google is it's a whole new world of influence that has never existed before, because if they want to support one candidate or party, there's nothing you can do. They
Wow.
control the platform.
Wow, that is huge. I think I'd like to have you back next year in January to go over this again, because I'm sure people's minds are blown by a lot of Julie Weiner just put her hands on her head. I mean, this is mind-boggling. Nobody has left. I do want to introduce you, and I hope you'll stay with us. Dave Saltman, Dave Saltman is at the top of the heap here in terms of media experience. And Dave, is there anything else you want to ask him right now, or do you want to wait for another time? Go at him. Okay. Dave is really essential to a lot of this. Dr. Epstein, this is mind-boggling stuff. I would like you, I hope, to stay. Are you still with us, Dr.?
I'm still here.
Okay, yes. I'd like you to stay if you can. We have KARL GROSSMAN, who is one of the great experts in nuclear energy, who's going to tell us what's going on. And those of us, all this new push, they're now talking about tripling nuclear power, which is beyond insane. And we are wondering where this is coming from in terms of public opinion. And we're wondering if we have talked about this, if the internet influencers, as we'd call them, are pushing the public towards nuclear energy, which makes no sense at all. So if you got a minute to listen to KARL, and if you would do us the favor of maybe investigating some of that agenda that might exist with Google and others, that would be very, very interesting to a lot of people. Mike Hersh Mike, you got your hand here?
Mike Hersh? Thank you, Sluggo. And this is absolutely fascinating data, Dr. Epstein. Absolutely incredible. I applaud your efforts, and you're doing an incredibly great job. I have to make a few points, and these are very important. They may sound nitpicky, but Google does not in any way, shape, or form have a left-leaning philosophy. There's no evidence that it's left-leaning. It's not even centrist. It's corporatist, and it's far to the right of where Richard Nixon or Dwight Eisenhower were in the Republican Party. It's not anywhere even near where Goldwater was, who believed in privacy and had some libertarian principles. Google leans far more corporate and so dedicated to systematically invading people's privacy and manipulating them, that there is absolutely nothing liberal about it. And so I think your terminology itself has an unintentional bias. I'm not accusing you of doing this on purpose, but I think it's very important for everybody to understand that the mainstream of the Democratic Party may be moderate. The leadership is conservative. The Republican Party is far to the right. And when you talk about a centrist, you're talking about somebody like Bernie Sanders, whose policies are overwhelmingly popular with the American people. And Google did not support Bernie Sanders. Hillary Clinton is in no way, shape, or form on the left. She's not even to the left of Trump on several important issues. What she is a loyal Wall Street corporatist, a neoliberal, which is something that's neither new nor liberal. It's a misnomer. And it's very important that we understand that Hillary Clinton was president of the College Republicans. She was on the Walmart board of directors. And there's nothing left or liberal about her. And there's nothing left or liberal about Google. And I think that if you re-examine your methodology and terminology with that understanding, I think the differences will be even more stark and even more threatening.
Mr. Wasserman, may I reply?
Yes, please. I want you to understand, Mike Hersh is one of the co-conveners of these calls, and very, very well placed in the politics of the various movements, including Progressive Democrats of America, which is, as you well know, and what he just said is probably indicative of a strong majority position at Progressive Democrats of America. KARL GROSSMAN, I've asked you to come on to talk about nuclear. I hope you've got time for this. KARL is scheduled next. He's a full professor on Stony Brook. It's a different school on Long Island.
Westbury.
Old Westbury,
Right.
professor of journalism. poised to talk about nuclear power, but Carl, I'm sure you're as interested in this as the rest of us, and we'll get to you if that's okay.
Sure, fine. No
Okay,
problem.
excellent. Okay, Dr. Epstein, go ahead, please.
Well, you're using language differently than I do, and I don't want to quibble about language. I will simply point out that 96% of Google's donations for years have gone to Democrats. That Hillary Clinton's chief technology officer, Stephanie Hannon, was a former Google executive. That Clinton's largest donor in 2016 was Alphabet/Google. From the perspective of at least people I know on the right, Hillary Clinton would be considered on the left. I think you're talking from a perspective of so-called progressive left. You know what? I hope we can, just for the purpose of the message I'm trying to convey, set aside all of these labels, because my point is simply this. I don't want a private company which is accountable to none of us, no matter what our label. It's not accountable to the public in any shape or form. I don't want this much power being in the hands of a handful of corporate executives. And that's what I study. That's what we've built this monitoring system to try to cope with, because you just don't know what they're going to do. And try to imagine if there's no monitoring system in place. It means you have absolutely no idea how they're using the incredible influence that they have. That they have the influence, believe me, is beyond doubt. But without a monitoring system, you have no way of knowing what they're doing. The EU, you may be aware, has fined Google repeatedly, more than 10 billion euros, has passed some very, very strong laws trying to keep Google and to a lesser extent other tech companies in check. It's made no difference, absolutely no difference. And in the EU, the irony is that although they've passed these strong laws, the laws are ignored because they have no monitoring system. It's very hard it will be hard for us to set up systems like this in the EU for various reasons, but we've been approached now by people from 7 countries asking us to help them set up these systems. These systems must exist, because if you don't set them up, you have no idea how ephemeral content is being used 24 hours a day to shift the opinions, attitudes, beliefs, purchases, votes of billions of people.
Wow, amazing. Mike, did you want to follow up on that? I think Mike's argument is that while you're using the term that Google is liberal, in the world of the progressive, in the world of progressives, they're not liberal at all. And
Sure.
I really I've met Hillary Clinton, and I totally agree. In no way, shape, or form would I consider a creature of the left. Mike, did you want to add to that?
Yeah. The fact of the matter is, this isn't quibbling. Hillary Clinton is in no way liberal. She just isn't. Neoliberal and liberal are not synonymous. And no matter how much money the executives give to a corporatist right-wing Democrat, that does not mean that the corporatist executives at Google are any more left-wing than Hillary Clinton is, or any more liberal than Hillary Clinton is. They're just not. And it's your entire methodology is skewed to the right. And I don't blame you, because that's the Overton window that's been imposed by the mainstream corporate media. That's what we've been led to believe. But if Hillary Clinton is on the left, what does that make the rest of the entire world that, unlike Hillary Clinton, supports single-payer health care, opposes fracking, believes in banking reform? Everybody in Europe, the EU, the developing global South, the entire world, and most American people, according to every legitimate opinion poll, shows the American public is far to the left of Hillary Clinton, and even Donald Trump is to the left of Hillary Clinton on some issues. It's not about left and right so much as it is about up and down. And Hillary Clinton has always served the overclass. She is not a liberal. She's not on the left. And no matter who gives her money, if Google gives her money, that doesn't mean that they support the left. That means they support elitism, corporatism, and rule by corporations.
I must interrupt, because you're continue to to try to take me off track, and I will not be taken off track. This is not about Hillary Clinton. This is not about labels. This is about an obscene and inappropriate use of corporate power. And that's what we have documented, and that's what we're trying to stop.
So I think a part of the discussion would be you have you yourself have an incredibly important power and platform. I mean, we've got more people on the call than when you started. So this is incredibly important and fascinating stuff. And I think Mike's point, and it's a precautionary point, is that if you say that Google has a liberal bias, and then the right wing jumps on that, the contention is that it's not a liberal bias. It's it's a Clintonite bias. I will send you, if you don't mind. I wrote a history of the United States, and the most difficult and infuriating part of my writing a history of the United States was writing about the Clintons. And Mike, in my world, is 100% right. In no way, shape, I met them both. In no way, shape, or form are they liberals. And so when your incredibly powerful and brilliant and absolutely essential work uses the term liberal to describe Google's bias, that hurts us on the progressive side. The question for us is not did they support Hillary, if that's making them liberal, it's what did they do to Bernie? And what did they do to people who really are considered modern liberals? So that's that. We're talking apples and oranges here, but they're both incredibly important. Nobody on this call would in any way, shape, or form downgrade or quibble with the importance of your work. It's phenomenal and unique. And Camilla, thank you for bringing Dr. Epstein on. The question is, the use of the word liberal. And that I think is worth an examination.
I'm going to give this matter serious thought, because I don't want to inadvertently be getting people off track here, and I think that's what's happened to some extent today, and in this call.
No, it's great. It's really great that we're having this discussion.
But to me, I'm not concerned about those issues, believe it or not. I am concerned about, again, the obscene and inappropriate use of corporate power, which is growing. It is growing by the minute, because internet penetration is growing around the world. So if I'd given this talk a year ago, I would have said they were impacting the beliefs and votes and so on of 4 billion or 3.5 billion. Now it's over 5 billion. So, they're exercising this power around the world. And, the fact of the matter is that they're very secretive about their actual position on issue by issue or candidate by candidate, party by party. They're very secretive. I mean, that makes it even worse in effect.
Yes, exactly.
It's just not knowing what it is they're trying to achieve, and them denying, of course, that they are trying to achieve anything, which is so ludicrous. And the fact that we see, consistent bias in one direction or another, that should cause you concern too, no matter what the labels. I think we all should try, especially hard these days, to try to avoid labels. But when it comes to this issue in particular, I'm not concerned about the labels, because, as I said, in different countries they do very different things. They do whatever in that sense, that's corporatism. They do whatever serves them.
Exactly.
But meanwhile, they do have this agenda, which Facebook does not have, as far as we can tell. They actually have an agenda of wanting to re-engineer humanity according to their own values.
Right.
And we don't know exactly what those are, but we know that they have the power to do it.
Exactly. You've made that point. It's an incredibly important point, especially, like Dave asked, to see the kind of data that you've accumulated. For Karl Grossman and I and the rest of us who work on energy, I would be really interested to find out, we would all be really interested to find out what their bias is on energy. Are they supporting nuclear? Are they opposing renewables? I would really, so when we get to the nitty gritty, once we acknowledge what about that, here we had Karl on to talk about, and I want to, if you don't mind, those of you who raised your hand, I want to jump very quickly to Karl while I have Dr. Epstein on to inform us. Karl expected to be on a half hour ago, so please, those of you with hands, if you'll give us forbearance. Carl, can you tell us, and Dr. Epstein, what we're hearing now, just within the last couple of weeks, of a proposed tripling of the of nuclear power on this planet? It's completely insane. Where is this coming from, Karl Grossman?
Well, it just actually has begun in the last couple of days, and it involves the COP28 conference in the Emirates, which is being held. Well, it's over on November 12th, and it began in a very suspicious way. I mean, here's the cover, if people can see it, of Time magazine this week. And the caption is, Oil Executive Sultan Al Jaber is at the center of a global climate fight, man in the middle. He's the president. This is the guy who is the head of the major oil company. What happens when Abu Dhabi's chief oil exec is tasked with phasing down fossil fuels? So there was, in the several days at the beginning of this this conference, it's an annual conference sponsored by the UN, there was all kind of issues being raised about vested interest, and this guy's vested interest. But speaking of vested interest, what's occurred in the last several days is a declaration presented, this is a couple of days ago, at this conference, and the headline, this is the CNBC story today, U.S. leads coalition to triple nuclear power by 2050 in an effort to address climate change. Let me just touch on some of the stuff in this this declaration. Well, let me go back to the CNBC story. The United States and more than 20 other countries pledged to triple nuclear power to achieve net zero carbon emissions and limit carbon change. Now, I've written and done television programs in recent years, a lot of both, on how nuclear power is not emissions free in terms of greenhouse gases, in terms of carbon. The nuclear fuel cycle is laden with particularly enrichment and mining and milling, and actually nuclear power plants emit carbon themselves, radioactive carbon, carbon-14. But the media, speaking about what Dr. Epstein has been speaking, and I'm a professor of journalism, and I was schooled at the New School of Social Research in New York, where I got my graduate degree in media theory. Media have not picked up whatsoever the connection between climate change and, in fact, nuclear power. Nations signing in, I mean, we can scream and yell about Biden doing this and his climate envoy, John Kerry, representing this point of view at the climate conference. But other nations signing in can, over 20, include the United Kingdom, Canada, France, Japan, Hungary, Sweden, the Netherlands of all places, Ukraine, Czech Republic. I can go on and on. And let me just I'll close in a few minutes, but their declaration tells the story, and it's online, recognizing the key role of nuclear energy in achieving global net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Baloney, baloney, baloney. Speaking of big lies, what follows then are a series of paragraphs, all beginning with the word recognizing that nuclear energy is already the second largest source of clean, dispatchable baseload power, recognizing the IAEA's activities in support of member states. The IAEA is an international mirror image of our former U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, which in 1974 was abolished by the Congress, and being in conflict of interest, both regulating and promoting nuclear technology. The IAEA is here today doing both, in conflict of interest, both missions, recognizing the importance of, again, part of the declaration, of financing for the additional nuclear power capacity and so forth. Wall Street has moved away from nukes because it's considered very risky, to say the least, investments. And then I'll end with this. Participants in this pledge then commit to And there's a bunch of paragraphs beginning with commit, including here a commitment to invite shareholders of the World Bank, international financial institutions, and regional development banks to encourage the inclusion of nuclear energy in their organization. I've spoken on these calls about the big excuse being used these days to promote nuclear power, the new baloney that it would alleviate, it would counter climate change, which is totally untrue. So here, what the nuclear industry and governments, they're all tied together in terms of nuclear, are doing is through the United Nations and through this series, these annual meetings, trying to, the meetings are part of the United Nations
climate something
convention. I can't read my writing here. On climate change, is really developing global policy in terms of climate change by using nuclear power. And it's come out of it, to my view, it's really come out suddenly in a very powerful way, and it has to be dealt with.
Yes, and it would be, and I raised this with you, Dr. Epstein, on the phone, on the call, because I would be astounded if Google and these other media influencers, mega influencers, are not supporting renewable. I mean, not supporting nuclear power. We have to remember that the nuclear industry has never separated from the nuclear power industry, has never separated from the nuclear weapons industry, and so something is going on to affect global opinion in favor of atomic power, as Karl is one of the great experts. And I very quickly, if you don't mind, want to call on someone who has his hand, who's another expert, Ron Leonard. Ron, are you there? I just saw you, and maybe now you're gone. But Ron Leonard is the founder of the renewable energy industry. And in the last year or two, we've seen a massive attack, a massive worldwide corporate attack on renewable energy. And I'm wondering if Google and these other influencers are not involved with that. So we wanted to alert. I had a double function here. Did you want Dr. Epstein to leave if you need to go? Otherwise, we'll keep you on. But I did want to applaud your presentation, which is mind-boggling. And I really want to thank Mike Hersh for raising the issue of the question of the use of the word liberal, because it's really something that needs to be rethought here. Especially
I agree. I agree with that completely, and I'm going to give that a lot of thought and see if there's some way I can respond to that meaningfully and maybe make changes in the way we're presenting ourselves. But meanwhile, I am going to have to run, but I'd be happy to come on again at some point. And, the good news is that we now have a system in place so we can find out for sure, no matter what these companies might say in their PR releases, we can find out for sure what they're showing real people, because that's the only way to know for sure what they're doing. You have to look at where the rubber meets the road, and that's the eyeballs of the people they're sending content to. And at least now we've made tremendous progress. That website that I showed you a little earlier, that's literally a $3 million website, and it's got a long way to go. A lot of features that need to be added, and we have to increase the number of computers that we're monitoring through. But the point is, we've made a lot of progress. But thank you so much, all of you.
We'd like to have you come back in January. Maybe rethink some of this. I will send you by Camilla a copy of my History of the United States. I don't expect you to read all of it, but please do read the chapters on the Clintons. I mean, I had to throw stuff at walls when I really was, having lived through it. When I really researched what the Clintons did, mind-boggling to me. So anyway, thank you so much. Thank you again for being with us. And Camilla, thank you for bringing Dr. Epstein, and we'll see you in January.
Very good. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
That was great. Great stuff.
Care. Mind-boggling. Dave Saltman, thank you also for raising the issue you did. That was really good.
Harvey, quick point.
What's that?
A quick point on you first.
Oh yes, Ron Leonard, please. You disappeared on me. Go ahead.
I was in the dark, but now I'm in the site. So the point that I need to make is we don't have to look for the secret bias of Google pointing to more nuclear power plants, or even the IRA Act giving it funding. Starting 7 years ago, a group of volunteers, that's what they call themselves, went to every state in the union, including Puerto Rico, to have conclaves of those people who were, in the know, or influencers, or however you want to call them, to present nuclear power as the alternative of how we need to have energy in the future. It was really simple. Somebody invested in putting in a very detailed and state-intensive PR campaign in every state in the nation, and it proved successful. You spend the money, you get the results. So this is what we're faced with. And if you look at the IRA, I just posted something in the chat. There is vast amounts of money to put these small nuclear power plants on the old coal-fired or other polluting sites that were in existence that are no longer being used, and otherwise bad land, but they think it's good land for nuclear power.
Right, and these guys, this industry is doing everything it possibly can to stop solar and wind. I mean, it's more than even economic. It appears to be some kind of deep religious crusade against renewable energy. It's mind-boggling, and I can't believe that they're not getting a hand from people like Google and the other. Although Google, of course, is very famously generating a lot of their power with renewables. We really need to know what's going on here, because it's mystifying in many ways. I do want to, Ron, it's great to have you with us. Stay with us. I did invite Nina Beatty on to talk about, and sorry, Justin, Stephen, Mary, we will get to you, but Nina Beatty is an invited guest. And Nina, you are talking about a power plant that I never knew existed in near Diablo Canyon in California. Can you talk to us, Nina? I'm trying to unmute you here.
And Harvey, once Nina has spoken,
yes, on MYLA. Yes, MYLA.
Can I make that announcement now?
Yeah, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. So, everybody, we have great news. California Solartopia is finally back on KPFK 90.7 FM at 5 o'clock. We've got a whole hour, 5 o'clock Pacific time on Wednesday evenings. And we just started in the middle of a fund drive. We had our first show last Wednesday, and we would encourage all of you, if you're in the position to do so, please show your support for the show by going to this website, and I'll put the link in the chat, or maybe, I'll put the link in the chat right after I've shown you how to do this. But basically, this is the place where you donate. And right here, you can see it says you can specify your support of a program by selecting from the list below. So as soon as you select that little arrow, you can scroll down and you can come to California Solartopia. And if you select California Solartopia, please make a donation for as much as you can. If you can make a donation of a minimum of $25, you become a voting member of KPFK, and that's very important, and we'll talk about that more later. But please go to this website, scroll down to California Solartopia, even $5, $10, whatever you can give. Thank you, Harvey.
Thank you, Myla. And people who are not in LA, Myla, can tune in on the internet somehow. Can you give us a link where people can listen to the show on the internet?
Well, yeah, I will. If you just go to kpfk.org, prominently on the website, it will say listen.
Right.
And
so it's great.
And there are archives as well of our show. So we can provide that information about how to access the archives, I guess, at some point in time.
Okay. One thing, Myla, we need to mention, we are in a desperate crusade. This is the year that will decide the fate of KPFK and of Pacifica Radio Network, and we will be talking about this more, but we're we're desperately trying to get Pacifica back on track to be a major, the major media presence of the progressive left in many different venues. And becoming a member of KPFK and Pacifica in general allows you to have a vote in that happening. So thank you for that, MILA. Somebody's phone is going off. I don't know if it's mine. Nina, thank you, MILA, again. And MILA, by the way, is about to join the Pacifica National Board. So thank you for doing that, MILA. I'm trying to unmute Nina. Nina Beatty, can we unmute you, please, somehow? So you can tell us, this has been an astounding meeting. We were going to have a discussion in the Middle East. I think if we can do that next week, those of you who came on for that, if you'll forgive us, because we've really, with Dr. Epstein's presentation gone over. I can't get Nina unmuted. Nina Beatty, can you speak? No?
I've been trying to get her to unmute as well. Unfortunately, maybe she's having some technical difficulties with her phone, which is really too bad. Let's have her on again soon.
Okay, we'll keep trying, Nina. Let's go to our questions. Stephen Sondheim, you haven't been able to speak. Can we unmute you? Stephen Sondheim? Boy, we're having trouble muting people.
Yeah, please unmute Stephen and give us your latest musical, if nothing else.
I'm sure he gets that. There we go. All right, Stephen, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. Well, I really have some points to support you, Harvey, on using Dr. Epstein or getting him to take a look for us at not only the energy policies, but the factors. And this is my shtick lately, that the public just assumes it's good for climate change. And the public doesn't know. And see, the presenters of this, whoever said they sent out, represent people all over the world a couple of years ago, it's already taken. People assume that we've got to have it for climate change. But the presenters of it don't tell you how long, how much. And Arnie Gunderson has put forth a notion that even by 2045, if they build 1,000 nuclear power plants, it'll reduce greenhouse gases by 6%. And no one challenges that. See, all the government people and the nuclear people and now the UN people say it's the deal. It needs to be challenged. And that's something I would like Dr. Epstein to look at, like people's takes on, are they just buying it or are they wondering? And then the other thing that really needs to be looked at is we're already in trouble on utilities. It's too much for many people. And Arnie says it's gonna triple the utility costs by 2045. That point hasn't been made. So it's the details that they're not answering to. And I'll work with you, Harvey. I would like to drum up something to get him to be able to look at those factors. Why are people just buying this hook, line, and sinker without being told the timeline or how it's going to happen or how much it's going to cost or how much it's going to influence the utility, the average person?
Yeah, you're.
So I wish I'd been able to tell him that, but I'll work with you on that.
Yeah,
okay.
Stephen, thanks for that. You're 100% right. They're not talking about the cost of nuclear power. They're not talking about the negative impacts on employment. None of that other stuff. It's really been, and this is a full court press. I mean, they are.
Well,
really,
the thing
really
is that when presenters, and I'm thinking of all the way from the U.S. Department of Energy to everybody, they just make their statement that it's good for climate change, and no one in the audience ever asks them, "Tell me how that's going to happen. How long is it going to take? How much greenhouse gases are it going to?" It's assumed, and this particularly interests me because of the way the internet might be influencing that. I don't know, frankly, if Google is directly supporting one kind of energy or another, but by not challenging these assumptions, they just get done.
You're
So-
100% right. Very well stated,
Okay.
Stephen. Thank you for
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
I believe, and keep coming with us. I appreciate it. Good, it's good to work with you. I do believe we have Nina unmuted.
Yes,
Nina,
I
Nina,
think I am.
Okay,
You can hear me okay?
Yes, you're good now. Thank you.
Great.
I'll point out, by the way, it's 3:50 p.m. California time. We got another 10 minutes to go to the top of the hour. As usual, we'll wander over toward 4:20 based on Stephen's Caruso's magnanimity. Thank you, Steve, again for engineering this. Wendy, good to have you with us. Mike Hersh, great points, Mike, by the way. Okay, go ahead, Nina, please.
I wanted to bring attention, and this has been posted on the website healfukushima.org, that for some time there have been some very credible reports by people that worked for Pacific Gas and Electric and General Electric that GE built a breeder nuclear reactor. It was not a power reactor. It was a breeder nuclear reactor for PG&E in Central California at a little town called Moss Landing. And this happened in the late 1960s. I was investigating this. There was an edge of urgency because there is a battery storage facility being built on the property. And as part of this, they've built quite a bit of it, but they're demolishing old equipment. And it appeared that this information has not been publicly available. Nobody in my area knows of any reactor there. And yet these reports that I became aware of some time back, I needed to get those to people. And according to them, GE Nuclear Power Division in San Jose designed and built it for PG&E about 1968, and it began operation approximately 1969. It was a very expensive reactor, and it operated until mid to late 1970s when it was shut down. Since the reactor was secret, it's not known why it was shut down. The control room was under if any of you have ever been to Central California, the two very tall smokestacks. And the control room was underneath one of those smokestacks. And there was an access stairwell to the control room with a metal railing. And a former worker at Moss Landing witnessed small planes periodically flying through the steam, presumably taking samples. One of the people that helped build the reactor later went to work for Pacific Gas and Electric in the 1980s and inquired about the reactor, how it was functioning, how's it doing. And PG&E employees told him it doesn't exist and shut up or you're finding a new job. And that very weekend, this was on a Friday, that these conversations were having, they were very upset about him talking about it. And the weekend, PG&E filled in the access stairwell with concrete and cut off the metal railings around. A former employee went to the Monterey County Planning Department to see if permits had been issued. Didn't find any record of permits. The NRC, which I've reached out to, and DOE also don't have any, told me they don't have any responsive records, but that can either mean they'd have no records or they have no records that they will disclose to the public. If it existed, it was, and I'm saying if it existed, it was operated at the same time that PG&E was operating the Humboldt Bay nuclear power plant, which Science Magazine called the dirtiest of the nation's power reactors. And it would have the same safety problems, the same lack of AEC oversight, and potentially the same high radioactive emissions and contaminations that have still not been dealt with in Humboldt Bay. There's still huge contamination issues and illnesses around the power plant. I have gone to, I've contacted state, federal, and local authorities to let them know about the situation, and they've either taken no steps that I know of, or they've refused to do so. CDC, ATSDR, which is a toxic substance agency at the federal level, they said they don't do investigations normally. And I said, after talking with them, it's, no, you don't do investigations, period, it sounds like. So I've let people know locally, but this is a very emergency situation in that the Vistra Energy is the company that has these part of the site that's going to be that they're developing with battery storage, lithium-ion battery storage, which is very explosively flammable under a variety of conditions. And they're continuing to demolish equipment and buildings at the site and may actually be doing excavation at some point, which is sort of chilling. So I wanted to get this information out to the public, to let them know that more investigation definitely needs to be done with proper monitoring equipment. There was a recent battery storage dog and pony show, I'll call it, a meeting that was John Laird, who many of you are familiar with, has been basically pushing nuclear energy and facilitating the possible extension that Diablo Canyon may be getting. He was there, and the local assemblywoman was there, and the public was not allowed to speak. We were allowed to submit questions.
Nina,
And
do you live near this facility?
yes, I do.
Well,
I
so
live
does
about
Tatanka. You should get in touch with Tatanka and with Linda Seeley. You must know Linda Seeley and the Mothers for Peace. And
yes, I've notified Mothers for Peace about this.
okay, well then you
situation.
should all be in touch. Tatanka is your neighbor here, and you know, this is pretty mind-boggling to have a nuclear plant that nobody ever heard of. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
It may not have been a huge plant. I mean, since it was for a breeder reactor, it's just unknown. There's so many unknowns about this. What was it there for? You know, were they trying to make off the books plutonium? Who knows?
Okay, well, listen.
So,
well, that's amazing stuff. Let's do more on this next week, because we've just obviously touched the tip of an iceberg here. We'll come back to this in a minute. Thank you so much for that, Nina. I've got your email, I believe. And MYLA Reson also. We can talk about this, MYLA, on Wednesday on our Solartopia show. So let's have you on with that. We'll come back to this in a minute. It's almost 4 o'clock. Steve, if you don't mind hanging with us another 20 minutes, that'd be wonderful. I did promise Barbara Wimsatt to speak next, and I don't know if she has to leave, but now we have the issue of unmuting her. There we go. Oh, I had you. Barbara Wimsatt.
Yeah, I
there you are. Okay, go ahead, Barbara, please.
Well, I had one question and a comment. The question was, you mentioned the connection between nuclear power and nuclear weapons, and I was just wondering if anybody could say more about that. And the second thing is, well, I live part-time in Michigan, near the lake, and there are 2 nuclear power plants close to where I live, right on the edge of the lake, Lake Michigan. And one of them still operates, Cook. The other one, Palisades, has been shut down, but a company just bought it, and they want to reopen it. It's a really old one.
Yeah.
That's a comment, but I was just wondering if you could say more about the connection.
Yes, we will. Well, Barbara, if you'll stay with us, let me get to the other folks quickly. But we have had a ton, and Karl Grossman is a great expert on the links between nuclear power and weapons as well. So we'll come back to that in a second. Let me get to Tonka, because I know he's a neighbor of this plant at Moss Landing, which is also at Morro Bay. Is that correct? Tonka, go ahead.
No, it's not Morro Bay. It's about a half hour south of Santa Cruz and about 15 minutes north of Monterey. So it's not Central California, it's Central Coast California. It's on the Pacific Ocean. And I know the man who was a Vietnam draft resistor. That's how we knew each other, who got the Humboldt plant stopped because he did the seismic research on it and stopped it in his tracks. And he also knows the people who helped shut that down, but I don't know. And I know someone else who was living in Santa Cruz who knew about that power plant. I didn't even know there was a nuclear plant there, but they said, oh yeah, that was shut down shortly after the Humboldt plant was shut down. So I have some people who know the history of it, and I look forward to talking to Nina. That's all for now.
Okay, it is shocking. Well, there is a plant north of LA, which has, it's known and it's been fought over, but not many people heard of it, Santa Susana, which had a major accident and is one of the most radioactive spots on Earth, right next to, it's in Simi Valley. And it's terrible. Anyway, thank you for that, Nina. And you've opened up a whole new can of nuclear worms here that Tatanka and Linda and Myla, and we'll have you on Wednesday on our Solartopia show, because people, if this is, no, I never heard of this place. So let's see what we can find out. Thank you so much for that.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Justin had his hand, and then Mary, and then Carl will come back to you. Just to wrap up here, we're at 4 o'clock Pacific time. Go ahead, Carl. And we did advertise Steve Donziger, who couldn't come on today to talk about the Middle East. So we'll do that next week. We'll revisit that. Go ahead, Justin, Mary. Anybody else wants to speak? Myla, do you have a hand? I can't tell. Go ahead, Justin, please.
So I should have saved my hand raising because computer behavioral science is actually my field of training. So I would have been perfect to respond to Dr. Epstein. But
we'll put you in touch with him. I'm sure he'd like to hear from you.
Yes, please. So anyway, y'all need to know these truths about such things. So first, influencers on social media are more effective than Google because people trust their friends more than they trust institutions, even if those friends keep the costs to the here and the world hidden. By the way, to discover a breeder reactor, you would use a neutron detector. You can look that up. And then as far as internet power goes, that's not unique because it's not the only thing that's been monopolized. In fact, state legislatures and agencies are so gerrymandered, they typically go against the preferences of 80% or more of their citizens. And I happen to work with the cross-partisan organization Represent Us, and as such, for the people that do these kinds of measurements, I recommend that those commentators use at least 2 axes for their bias labels. First is corporatist versus populist, and the other is dogmatic versus emergent.
Okay. All right, thank you.
That'll help us actually make more sense of the world that we're living in.
Right, and we have to remember that great religious truth that your dogma is always going to eat your karma.
Yep.
So thanks for that. Okay. Mary, and anybody else who wants to raise, we're over the time limit here, but I'll go back to Karl Grossman for a wrap for sure. Anybody else wants to jump in, please do. Mary, go ahead, and then we'll go to Karl.
All right, just 2 things. Number 1, please understand that besides your nuclear power plants down there in California affecting the life of people in California, whenever California is in drought, they're pumping water out of the Columbia River, which is being fed nuclear waste by our Hanford nuclear power plant that is on the Columbian River. Right. Okay, so I just want to point that out for you guys. And number 2, when we were talking about how come we don't see it in media, we're constantly complaining that none of the real topics are making any headway in the news or even getting any form of spotlight, maybe except for a little local. And we got to remember that due to the National Press Agency's stranglehold on the media, the days of Watergate in-depth investigative reporting is long gone. And that the second thing that's causing the problem is the monopolization of our networks to where we don't have any biased networks that just report. You know, all of it's controlled. You know, if you look at every channel, all the news people sound the same. They're all saying the same thing. It's all typecast and set down, a lot like our radio is now, to where we don't have DJs we can call anymore. It's just a loop that's put in. So we're all stuck with this loop and not the reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Very well spoken, Mary. Appreciate it. Karl Grossman, let's unmute you here. I think we've had issues with that too before. Okay. Anybody else wants to jump in? We're going to sign off soon, so please do. Karl, this has been a mind-boggling couple hours. Camilla, again, thank you for bringing Dr. Robert Epstein. That was a real path-breaking. And Mike, thank you for raising the issue of his use of the term liberal. That's a big deal, and I think it's going to have an impact. Karl, go ahead.
Yeah, well, on the issue of the connection between nuclear weapons and nuclear power, that two sides of the same coin. some excellent pieces have been written in recent years by Alfred Meyer, who was long involved with Physicians for Social Responsibility, including on the Progressive website and in the Progressive magazine. I also interviewed Alfred Meyer. Just go to Enviro Video, which is the TV production company that I do television for, and I mean, the origins actually of nuclear power involve the notion of using nuclear reactors to produce plutonium for weapons. And the idea came from the plutonium production reactors up in the state of Washington at Hanford. And indeed, even today, for the hydrogen bomb, tritium is produced. I think it's the Watts Bar nuclear power plant. In terms of media, I begin my book, Cover Up What You're Not Supposed to Know About Nuclear Power, stressing how PR and manipulation of information was long part and parcel of the nuclear push. Later on, it was no accident that GE and Westinghouse are the Coke and Pepsi-Cola historically of nuclear power. Most nuclear power plants around the world are either designed or built by GE or Westinghouse. It was no accident that GE acquired NBC, or Westinghouse acquired CBS, and what was presented earlier in terms of public manipulation by media, the new media, and I suppose Google could be considered part of new media, should be viewed, should be probed as part of this. I call the book Cover Up What You're Not Supposed to Know About Nuclear Power, because there's been this cover-up from the onset. There's been cover-ups on so many issues by people who use media not to inform, but to confuse and to suppress information.
Thank you for that, Carl. And you're the great expert. Carl's been writing about this for since the dawn of time. Is there? We were, as I say, going to have a discussion on the Middle East. We'll do that again. I want to reiterate: we rarely raise money, but on this show, but when MYLA raises the issue of donating to Pacifica through Solartopia, California Solartopia, we do have a group called New Day Pacifica, and when you donate $25 to Pacifica, you do get a vote. You become a voting member, and we need listener members. So if you're interested at all, contact me or go to New Day, the New Day website, New Day Pacifica website. Very worth doing, and we need your support. Wendi Lederman, I think you're going to get the last word here. Wendi?
Thank you. I'll just add a little nugget to Carl's great assessment of the military connection of the Department of Energy and the Department of Defense. And one, there's a Senate bill, SB 4066. I don't know the last action on it, but it was proposed earlier this year. And it basically takes away whatever barriers there have been between the Department of Energy and the DoD, and calls for certain supplies for the DOE to supply the military with depleted uranium. And if you go through the defense budget from fiscal year 2023, there's all kinds of new nuclear programs that are kind of hush or just not really advertised. There's just a bunch of them, and especially having to do with space, and it's all kinds of new nuclear programs. And within it also creates basically quotas that the DOE needs to supply minimum amounts of depleted uranium to the military. So, I mean, there's definitely a market for the suppliers. So I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Steve and Mike and Wendi and MYLA and everybody. This has been another incredible 2.5 hours. Thank you, Camilla, for bringing Dr. Robert Epstein with us. And do look Wednesday evening, 5 p.m. MYLA and I will be on the California Solartopia show with Sakura Forest. KPFK.org. and you can listen into that. We still have 47 people with us, but it's time to go. Give Steve an extra 10 minutes to relax and toke up. And we'll see you next week, same time, same place, 5 p.m. Eastern time. It will be our 160th GREEP call. And I love you all. Parting as such, we saw. Am I hearing someone wanted to pipe in?
Yeah, real quickly, Sluggo, I just want to apologize to anybody who felt that I was a little bit rude or whatever. I honestly expected Dr. Epstein to nod and agree that his approach to politics, equating donations from millionaires and billionaires to Hillary Clinton with the left, was sloppy and inaccurate. I expected him to just nod and say, good point. And then I was going to go after Google for being a monopoly. But he tried to say that any effort to improve and refine his model was getting off the track. And I think that says a lot. I think he's very brilliant. I think he's very brilliant, but I think that his understanding of politics throughout history is a little bit off. And Sluggo, I hope he reads your book. I think that would clear up a lot of things for him.
I think he understood your point. I think he just disagrees. But he did remarkably, I thought, agree to take a new look, a fresh look at his use of the labels. I thought he was very open. I'm really glad you raised the point, and I think it's extremely important. And I hope he pursues some research on this energy issue. And
yes,
and it's also very interesting, Justin's point, that influencers that people think they know are more influential than the abstract kind of manipulation from Google. That's a direct mirror of what we've been talking about in terms of grassroots organizing, where Ray McClendon and Miller have emphasized that the people who have the biggest influence in terms of political campaigns are people that voters know personally. And so you have this world illusion, especially among younger people, that they actually somehow have a personal connection to these paid influencers. That's really become a huge industry. But what we've been talking about in terms of political organizing on the local level reemphasizes that the people that we want people organizing in communities that actually know the people in the communities and that live in the communities, and that's a major deal. So very productive talk. If none of you are as exhausted as I am, congratulations, but I'm going to go lie down.
Sluggo, before you take a nap, I really do hope you email a copy of your book, because I think you do an excellent job of showing corporatism and how corporatism came to control the United States and how we've been struggling for freedom against it from, at least since the late 1800s and the rise of the railroads.
Well, and then, by the way, anybody of you who are interested in reading my history of the United States, I will send you a free PDF. My email is solartopia at Gmail. There you go, Gmail, Google Mail. Solartopia. Oh, there's Steve's got the cover there. Thank you. Solartopia at Gmail. I will send you a free PDF. Oh, it's Paul Newman, my great buddy in LA. Solartopia at gmail.com. Write me and I will email you a free PDF of the book. And MYLA, again, I want to thank you for mentioning our show. We'll be on. Anybody wants to join Pacifica, please do. And thanks, everybody. And please support the cause, actually. But there you go. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Paul, Steve. And
about having significant verbiage showing up in the news about more nuclear power plants is cogent, and whether it is a paid advertisement or not is really a question that we should examine.
Absolutely, and it's really causing us nightmares, so we got to deal with this now. Yeah. Okay, you guys, thank you. Paul, good to see you with Franklin Roosevelt. I'm still waiting for you to put up Eleanor, but one of these days it'll happen. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much. No nukes. Have a good one. Thank you, Wendy. And no nukes, everybody. And Ruthie Sackheim, great to see you with us today. Glad you could join us. I hope you keep coming and joining us. Ruthie's a great activist in the Bay Area. All right, you guys, no nukes. Take care.
No nukes. See you next